Welcome to the Jeremy and Andy Talk Movies podcast. I am Jeremy.
I'm Scuba Steve.
Perfect.
I'm Andy, and we're in 1999.
We are in the year
We
1999,
are.
which has been just the gift that keeps on giving
Oh my gosh.
as we return to these movies that are turning 25 years old. And so we are getting the old nostalgia goggles on and going back and looking. And we both expressed with this week.
Yeah.
We returned to a similar or same genre.
Yeah.
We both went to comedies, and the comedies that we haven't seen in a while. And there was a little concern of like, how are these going to hold up?
Mm-hmm.
And we'll start with, I think what I want to do is start with your pick.
Okay.
If that's okay. So you want to intro what your pick was for us?
Yeah. I mean, and I talked about this last week. You know, we're trying to not only just look at the movies, but kind of I guess the movies that were making an impact, right? Like that's obviously the point. And, you know, Austin Powers 1 comes out in 97, kind of comes out of nowhere. And it's a movie that people like. And it makes, I think it made like $54 million on like a $6 million budget or something. But most importantly, what happened is that it was a movie that left an imprint into the culture. And people started talking like Austin Powers and, you know, the glasses and the teeth and the oh, behave and all that stuff. Pretty quickly you started hearing it. I'm in high school in 1997 and you start hearing the Austin Powers talk in the hallways and stuff. Yeah, exactly. And, you know, you think like, what an improbable success. Like Mike Myers is well known. And Wayne's World is a thing, but he is spoofing like James Bond, clearly, but just like this whole genre, I guess, of like spy stuff and British stuff.
Yeah.
And it just, you look backwards, you think, how did anybody go see that movie?
Right. And obviously, when it came out, you said pretty small budget. It was a hit, but you know, the type of
a modest hit.
Right. Like great hit for its budget, but it was one of those video successes.
Video success.
Like it comes out and it kind of had to have the word of mouth because people were looking at it and going, "What is this
What
thing?"
is this?
And then people watching are like, "Hey, this thing's actually like really funny. You should check this out."
Yeah.
And it has that very natural fan growth from it.
And so then, you know, obviously because it's Hollywood, a sequel is greenlit 2 years later. Austin Powers, The Spy Who Shagged Me, comes out and grosses more in its opening weekend than Austin Powers did in its entire theatrical run.
Yes.
And all of a sudden, it's like, okay, Mike Myers, arguably for a moment, they're the biggest star in Hollywood.
Yes.
And this is just huge. And it's all insane because it's all based off this stuff that people my age don't even understand what is being spoofed. So it's just really wild. So I just was like, well, this is a movie we need to go back and revisit.
Absolutely. So just a little more on those numbers.
Yeah.
The budget for this one ballooned up to 33 million. And, you know, so obviously a lot more faith from the studio. Like you said, like they think about it. And then, 313 total gross on this movie.
That's unbelievable.
Yeah.
I mean, comedies now are scratching and clawing to get to $50 million grosses.
Yes.
And then this movie comes out and just does enormous business. And again, you know, people are just immediately, you know, quoting it, doing the accents. Fat bastard becomes a thing. And it's just
Mini-Me becomes
a cultural phenomenon, basically. And it's just this whole thing. And it's wild. And so it's like, this is definitely all worth revisiting. And then you start seeing, I remember Mike Myers as the Austin Powers character was on like the MTV movie awards one year. You see, it takes over pop culture for this moment in time. And it's crazy.
So rewatching this, did you think it held up?
Man, I think that a lot of the jokes and the humor have not aged greatly.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not going to say I didn't enjoy this movie. Like, I wish I could articulate this better. Because it's like, no, in a lot of ways it doesn't hold up. But yes, I was still entertained. But, you know, what grated on me more this time, like, so it's like now the funny stuff to me now is, Will Ferrell running it back again and flying off that cliff or whatever. I'm down here and that's still funny. But then it's like there's just too much of Mike Myers just being like, oh, behave. And you're just like, okay, Mike Myers, I think, is the conversation where you're like, he has such a weird, unique sense of what is funny and humorous. And this willingness to just run with it. And I think that's best displayed in I'm probably jumping way too far, but it's like there's this scene where these guys are watching him and the Heather Graham character in a tent. Right. And it looks like, I don't know, a non-crude way to say this. It just looks like she's pulling a bunch of stuff out of his butt. Like that's the joke. She's not, but from their angle, it looks like it.
The shadows, yeah.
And that scene just goes on and on and on and on. And it's like, there's just nobody, I don't even know who to compare Mike Myers to.
There really isn't anybody. He is a comedic actor who likes to disappear in his parts.
Yeah.
He
is Dr. Evil. He's Fat Bastard. He's Austin Powers.
He's the Daniel Day-Lewis of comedic actors, and that he
doesn't should have just got Daniel Day-Lewis to be Fat Bastard.
Exactly. But Mike Myers, I think people would recognize on the street, but for the most part, he doesn't play characters who are just like, this is
Steve,
this is just Mike Myers
mechanic.
Yeah. You'll never accuse Mike Myers of playing the same character. He finds these eccentric characters and that he builds out
and commits 1,000% to it. Whether you think it's funny or not, you can't argue his commitment to the part
for sure.
So I don't even know how to decide if it holds up or not. I mean, it's I think so much of it, of course, is just going to depend on what you think of Mike Myers.
Yeah.
So it's I'll do a cop out. Yes and no.
Okay.
I wish I had something better to say. How about you?
I'm probably right there with you. I think what surprised me is not only would this movie not get made now because of a lot of the appropriate or inappropriateness.
Right.
And the fact that comedies don't get made much anymore. Comedies like this particularly don't get made anymore, which is comedies that just feel like a bunch of sketches.
Yes.
Rewatching is this is hardly a movie. It's just a bunch. I'm not surprising Mike Myers came big in SNL.
Because it's just a series of SNL sketches.
And it's basically it's all going to be tied together in this, spoof of James Bond, and we're gonna have a generic story through, but
it's just
story
a series
doesn't matter.
Of sketches.
And it's the type of movie I always say it was really the type of movie that nowadays would just live on social media, on TikTok and stuff, in clips.
Yeah.
Here's this clip that you don't need any other context from the movie
and it's just funny.
And it's funny on its own because it's not about an ongoing storyline.
And honestly, that's probably the best way to say it. It works as a like you said, TikToks and stuff like that. As a movie as a whole, I guess the conversation to have too is just does it really even matter? And I think the answer is no. Right. It really doesn't matter if it's a good, coherent movie, because it's not. Yeah. It's just an excuse for Mike Myers to cook. And does he ever cook?
Yes.
And just some funny sequences. And they, even the movie itself doesn't even, it's they time travel in this movie for literally no reason at all in a car. In a beetle or a bug or whatever those things are called. And it's who cares? What's it matter? So I don't know, but it's my thing is, and I didn't get a chance to show this movie to my kids this week, but one time I was watching Wayne's World. And I can tell you, in their minds, they had never seen anything less funny in their lives.
That's heartbreaking to me.
It is, but it's I couldn't really argue with them too much, and so I think maybe that's what would have happened if they would have watched this with me. I think there's a chance they would have sat there in just dead silence.
I can definitely see, like you said, Austin Powers. It's if you weren't right there in that moment, what a grating character. What just kind of an obnoxious
like I said,
character.
Just randomly, he'll just be oh, behave. And you're just dude, what? What?
I do think watching this movie, one of the thoughts I had was, it definitely is more of a Dr. Evil movie than an Austin Powers movie. And I think they realized, in the first one, there's more comedy to mine there from Dr. Evil. And of course, it's famously he's doing a Lorne Michaels impression,
right?
which famously he's kind of stole the impression from Dana
Carvey, and there was this beef. I know there's like a lot of layers to Austin Powers. It's weird.
Yeah, but
and I even saw stuff online where they were beefing. Otherwise, it's like just get Dana Carvey to be Dr. Evil.
Yeah,
you know, and run back Wayne's World. So it's wild stuff.
Yeah, but again, a lot of the best stuff in the movie. You know, if we were just kind of talk about even the stuff that hit. I mean, we're talking about Mini Me and Fat B, we'll call it.
Look, I've already just said it.
I know.
I'm just gonna say it. We got to get a little edgy on here once in a while.
That's true. The most memorable things from the movie aren't Austin Powers.
No, they're not.
He is just sort of the title namesake who everything circles around. But most of the funniest parts are Dr. Evil, whether it's him doing the zip it thing.
Oh my gosh,
that's another note I had is there's a lot of running back. You mentioned the Will Ferrell thing already. They do
run it back.
They do a lot of running jokes back, and I think what helped me enjoy this one is I haven't seen any Austin Powers movie in a long time,
right?
And so
that stuff felt a little more fresh.
Yeah, I wasn't like, oh, I just watched this. If I watched them, I bet sequentially, like just in a row, I'd probably be like, okay, we're doing it again and again. So yes, going back to Dr. Evil, I mean, him bullying number 2, Rob Lowe is number 2. That's hilarious. I don't know why.
It's funny.
So funny.
I should be more clear. Yeah. I did laugh a lot watching this,
but I'm with you. Like, because it is just such a series of sketches, because there's not really a coherent story. Every comedy like that, the biggest issue is always the third act, where they've got to like have some sort of resolution and they got to bring things together.
And this whole movie's just been ridiculous.
And it's all sketches. By the end, it's like I'm not really invested in. There's less jokes hitting now. I mean, they still have a lot of jokes at the end
because the plot has to kick in. Whatever plot there is.
By the time we're pushing plot at the end, I'm like, okay, this movie's dragging a little bit. And it's not even a long movie, but it's feeling long because it just I'm not caring about wrapping up any kind of story here.
Exactly. I got to say this though, and maybe I don't know if you have a spot for this. Seth Green, he is so funny in this movie.
It's weird. Maybe we've talked numerous times about doing an episode of actors and like I thought they were going to be a bigger deal. Seth Green should probably deserve to be on that list, but he was a big deal without ever feeling like he really had a big breakout part.
I know.
He was always on the verge of like. But I remember watching on VH1, there was some like 30 hottest stars under 30 or something like that. And Seth Green was ranked number 1 at the time. And it was around the time of this movie because everybody thought this guy is so hot right now. He's going to be huge.
And he's like, that's what I was just like, dude, Seth Green is just on fire in this movie. He's so funny.
Yeah.
And like, I don't know. I guess maybe just because he is, he's not doing the Mike Myers thing. He's just a dude. Like he actually has a character.
Yeah.
As much as you can have a character in this. And so I guess it's him going against Mike Myers, who's doing everything. And Seth Green is just being funny.
Yeah.
Like Seth Green just reacting to all that zip it and shush and all that stuff. It's like, this is really funny.
Yeah.
And I was watching this and it brings back all these memories. And it's like, do you remember the movie Can't Hardly Wait?
Yes.
Seth Green cooks in that movie too.
Yeah.
I was just
iconic like, role.
It is. And it's like, I went and watched him. I didn't have time to watch Can't Hardly Wait, but it made me go to YouTube and watch Can't Hardly Wait clips.
He plays Kenny Fisher, a.k.a. Special K.
Oh my gosh. And he's just on fire in that movie. And it's like, not that Seth Green's had a bad career. I mean, he's the voice of Chris on Family Guy.
Yeah.
Probably makes more money an episode doing, than he's doing fine. But it's like, man, why didn't this guy shoot to the top?
Yeah. So
I don't know. These are just, I'm kind of just spewing my thoughts I had while watching this movie.
Right. So yeah, make sure I kind of got my notes, which I did get a lot of them here with it being really Dr. Evil's movie and a lot of the humor mined out of that. I just have to say this. Heather Graham on my Mount Rushmore of like as a teenager celebrity crushes for sure.
Yeah.
When I was watching this movie and she comes on the screen, I was like, Heather Graham. I forgot.
Well, listen,
yes,
let's have the really honest Heather Graham talk. The movie I'd seen her in previous to this in the theater was Boogie Nights.
Yeah.
And I will be tactful and just say there were some scenes in that movie that really caught my attention. And so that's the thing too, where it's like you do a movie like this, and it is prime material to catch like the upcoming like whoever's red hot at the time actress.
Yeah.
And they do with Heather Graham. Now, whether she has anything to do in this movie or not she really doesn't.
No.
I mean, she doesn't hurt the movie.
Right.
It's like you're basically just getting her for kind of like her looks and just her presence.
Yeah.
And yeah, and so that's another question too, where you're like, you watch this movie, you're like, how did all these people not just skyrocket? And they kind of didn't in a way. I mean, I think Heather Graham has worked steadily and stuff, but yeah.
And I actually read that she was struggling. It had been like a year and a half since she'd been cast in anything.
Yeah.
Before getting this part, and she was like, it's one of those actors who are about ready to give up stories,
which is crazy because she, Boogie Nights, left an impact for sure and was critically acclaimed and yeah.
But yeah, so
I'd say after Boogie Nights though, she was getting probably very specific.
I'm gonna guess
offers for movies, and I'll just leave it at that. But
yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it's hard to sit here and be like Heather Graham so good in this movie,
right?
I mean, she did what she needed to do.
Yeah, I mean, and again, we're spoofing Bond movies, so it's got to have the Bond movie, the Bond girl type thing
with the ridiculous name and all this stuff. Yeah.
So
I want to ask you a question.
Yes,
you're asking you ask a lot of questions on here. What got you laughing the most rewatching it now?
Oof, that's a good question. Because I did laugh several times.
Me too.
There was several parts that got me. It. Like I was saying, it probably was Dr. Evil bullying number 2. When he was bouncing the globe and he throws it off his face. He's like, you gonna cry now? You gonna cry?
I know. And you're like, why? Why is this even happening?
And then after he cries, and Dr. Evil does the really like nerdy, shoots the globe into the thing. And
I know. His
celebration is not cool at all. You can tell like it's Dr. Evil's so not cool, and he makes it. He's so proud of himself, and he does like the little punch and kick, and
it's so funny. And that's
so
again that must be a Mike Myers thing, and other people do too. Where it's like we're just gonna let this keep going on.
Yeah,
yeah.
I mean, you really get the sense in this movie. I don't know how much of it was improv, but you get the sense that they're just like, okay, now we just need a scene we're explaining the generic evil plan. And we got 5 minutes to kill, and so like, what are we gonna do?
Fill some time here
to kill some time. Dip your face in a cup of coffee and say I did it on purpose. We call it a Belgium dip.
Yeah,
it's just,
I know, right?
Yeah, and then also I'm always a big fan of a good fourth wall break when they're explaining the time travel stuff, and Basil goes, "Try not to think about it too much," and that goes for you too. And he looks at the screen, and I did read that was improvised.
Yeah. And that's funny. So, that's funny, yeah.
And Austin Powers commenting that it's amazing that England looks nothing like Southern California.
Yes, that's really, and that's the kind of stuff to me. The like we've talked about the behave and all that stuff. Your mileage may differ on that, and that stuff will age because it gets. But it's a little. That's what cracked me up this time. Just the littler moments, the smaller moments, I should say. I thought it was so funny. So it's like in Austin Powers 1, Elizabeth Hurley is the main, and her and Austin hit it off. And then at the very beginning of this one, it's like, yeah, she's a robot. And he tells that the dude, and he's like, oh yeah, we knew that. And then Mike Myers just does this really funny look, and they just completely brush past it.
It's I thought that moment right after I answered.
I think I laughed harder at that than anything else that happened.
Yes.
Because like I said,
we knew alongside lady, he just has this face like, wait, what?
Wait, why would you have told me that? And it's like, that's really funny. And it's like a funny wink at the audience where we're like, yeah, we know. Like, we just, whatever. And to me, that stuff was kind of funny.
Yeah. It really, Austin Powers, the actual Austin Powers character probably made me laugh the most when he's about to go on the time machine and he does the classic, like he goes in reverse instead of forward, and then he drives into, he's just wrecking everything. And
that's so Mike Myers stuff.
Yes.
Yeah.
And like you said, it always carries on just a little longer than you would expect.
Yeah. It goes on 30 seconds longer than it should. And it's the thing where it's like, it starts funny and then the joke kind of wears out, but then it just keeps going to the point where you almost just have to keep. It reminded me of like the Family Guy when he hurts his knee, and that just goes on and on and on.
Yeah, and same thing for the people seeing the rocket ship in the sky.
Oh my gosh,
and it looks like and then cut, and then
oh my gosh, and they ran that back, right? That was in the first one, and yeah.
So it's one of those movies. I could probably go back and pick out ones that worked better when I first saw it and don't work as well now, and then vice versa. Like things I didn't think is funny when I was younger and now it's funnier now. So like that's probably really the best way to describe how this movie has evolved over time. Is just there's so many little jokes, and the ones that I find funnier have kind of shifted around. So now I'm finding like the little reactions and the comments like a lot funnier than like the stuff that's more memorable and obvious.
One thing that really stuck out to me watching this, even though it's like this ridiculous movie, is just, and I guess we've brushed on it, but just how unique Mike Myers was and how there's just nobody like that anymore.
No.
And it just made me wonder the whole time, like, is there a place, and we've talked about comedies on here before, we did a whole comedy episode, but it's like, they're just clearly not what they used to be. They're not as effective. I mean, like you said, this movie made what, $300-something million worldwide in 1999. And that is wild. I can't imagine any scenario in 2024, any comedy that's going to come out and make $300 million.
Yeah.
And, unless it's like Deadpool and Wolverine, okay. But that's got, 15, 20 years of MCU history
connection,
and comic book, but something like this, like I said, that just came out of nowhere, and it's like, and it just made me wonder, like, do we need someone like Mike Myers now?
Yeah, I mean, it honestly, as I'm talking about, this movie would live on social media these days, but it's probably social media that killed movies like this because back in the day, in order to spoof all sorts of things or make fun of different references that people understood, you had Saturday Night Live, and then you had movies like this.
Yeah.
That's where you got the jokes about all the things that we all were familiar with. And nowadays on social media, it is littered with people who, what they do is you go on there and it's just everybody making jokes about or parroting what's happening in real life. You don't need to go sit through an hour and a half long movie of a whole bunch of them in order to get it. You just get it in your little clips online. And so that's probably what killed the whole movie.
You're probably right. And it almost felt a little edgier back then to be making fun of something.
Yeah.
Because now just everyone, that's the internet. Yeah. That's social media, just people making fun of stuff. But it's hard to explain, in 97 or 99, 97 when the first one comes out, 99 when this one comes out, there was just like this, I don't know, I think edginess might be the right word, of like, oh man, like we're making fun of, like the idea of like, if someone told you like, yeah, we're going to spoof or make fun of James Bond, everyone would just be like, okay, like, who cares? But at that time, there was like, oh man, they're going to make fun of some of this stuff. That it had it felt more impactful, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. And it's such a weird time. Like watching this movie, I'm sitting there going like, it is crass. And that's one of the things I remember about it as a kid.
It is.
The crassness as a kid. I mean, again, I'm 15 when this movie comes out, or 14 really when this movie comes out, because it came out in the summer. And so like that alone makes you feel like, oh, I'm watching something that's got edge to it. But there's also like so much juvenile humor. There's so many poop jokes. There's, things like that where you're just going like, as I'm watching now, I'm like, for being such an edgy movie, it's just a lot of like juvenile, like,
there's a ton of
very silly, dumb humor.
And that's really funny because like you think of Mike Myers, I do, like someone my age, and it's like, you have people that are like comedic genius. Who can create these characters and stuff like this. But yeah, still throwing in a lot. And, like Mike Myers, his ideas, and like he's just all over this movie, creatively, I mean. And it's like, yeah, but he still goes back to a lot of, they do it in Austin Powers 1 with Tom Arnold. They do a ton of toilet humor in these movies.
Yes.
So I don't know. And maybe that stuff too just doesn't land now because it's just everywhere.
Yeah.
Like in 1999, it did feel like its own, I don't know if subgenre is the right word, but it was just like you didn't get it all the time everywhere. And now it probably is just out there more like, TikToks and stuff there, So I'm glad the Austin Powers movies exist because they are a fascinating look. Like, so it's like 97 and then what was the third one? Like 2002, I think, or 3. Early 2000s.
Early 2000s.
And so I'm glad they exist because it's an interesting look at what was going on in movies and comedy at that time.
It's very interesting that Austin Powers is a time capsule itself of a movie that was spoofing, like, and it's a time capsule.
I know.
The late 60s. And it was like, what if we took this crazy 60s sort of personality that's mixing James Bond and the Beatles.
Yeah.
And we put them in modern times, like how silly that would seem.
Mm-hmm.
And we're doing the same thing looking back at it now with actually having been almost as much time.
As much time, I know. It's crazy.
Between the two.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I am so glad because I remember for years hearing all these rumors about an Austin Powers 4. I'm really glad that never happened.
Yeah.
We don't need that.
No.
I remember by the time, I was all in on Austin Powers. I saw it in the theater. I saw this in the theater. I was all in. And then by the time Goldmember came out, I just definitely, and I haven't watched it in forever, but I do remember watching it and being like, all right, like, I think the joke has worn itself out. Because that's 3 movies in 6 years or 5 or 6 years. So there's a lot of Austin Powers really fast. And like I said, you'd see him on, the MTV Movie Awards and Mini-Me and all this stuff. And so by the time that last one came out, I remember kind of being ready to be done with it.
Yeah, that's fair. I will just say that I still hold in higher esteem the Wayne's World double feature.
I like Wayne's World.
But I do really like the Austin Powers trilogy. I think he's probably obviously had more success with the Austin Powers trilogy, made a lot more money. He's probably more known for it.
It's wild, though. I was doing a little Mike Myers research. Wayne's World was like the 3rd highest grossing movie of the year. It made like $100 and something million.
That's wild. I didn't realize.
Like, it was a huge hit. And then Wayne's World 2, not as much, but that came out a year later. Like they were trying to strike while the iron was hot.
Yeah.
But
same thing as Austin Powers. Like those movies are very much like sketch movies.
Oh yeah, I mean they're barely coherent movies.
Of random, yeah. I just happened to find what they're riffing on much funnier than the Austin Powers world.
Well, and here's a question maybe you know the answer to. What happened to Mike Myers? Why don't you see or hear from Mike Myers anymore? Do you have any theories or do you know anything?
It's a great question.
Like I always heard he was really hard to work with.
Yeah, because I think he's very like
demanding
and
he's
specific.
A perfectionist.
Yeah,
he has a vision, and it is his vision.
Yeah. And I mean, obviously, after Austin Powers trilogy, he followed it up with he's got the Shrek movies, but if we put those aside, the Love Guru, and that was legendary bomb, and
it's unwatchable.
It was like he just didn't bounce back from it, or maybe he didn't want to. Maybe he just had such a bad experience with the reception of that. I don't know. But the only thing I even know that he did, well, I should also add, he did The Cat in the Hat as well.
One of your favorite movies, I know,
which also did not do well. So he just had a couple of bombs in a row.
Yeah. And then he just randomly, he's in Inglourious Bastards in a small part. And he did some Netflix show in the last couple years.
Like triumvirate.
People hated it.
And it was, I think it's one of those things where a generation of people came along that didn't get him.
Yeah.
And
I would agree with that completely. It was. I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. Yeah. He, when he was hot, he was red hot. From Wayne's World to Goldmember, it was really all he did. Like 2 Wayne's World movies, 3 Austin Powers movies. He was in that 54.
Oh yeah.
Which I think kind of came and went.
Yeah.
But anyway, for the most part, that's what he did for that probably 10-year, 11-year run. And he was red hot.
Yeah.
And then it was just, it's weird. Once it was over, it was just over.
Yeah. And now he's, just kind of cameos. He's been in a couple of the like SNL reunion things as a brief skit, like
I know they've ran back Wayne's World. Yeah.
He had a bit role in the Bohemian Rhapsody movie.
That's
as
right.
Like the record producer. But like you said,
it's just kind of weird. I mean, he was on top.
Yeah.
Goldman or Spider Shadow comes out, and I remember very well, comes out shattering these, records for comedies and all this stuff. And then, it's weird.
Yeah. I think he's still got people who would defend him. I think a lot of his SNL castmates will still, speak highly of him, talk about what a brilliant guy he is. Yeah. Just his own way. But I mean, the way they talk about it also, like, he doesn't sound like a guy who was ever
seeking fame.
Right. Seeking fame or like needing to be around people in the business. Like he strikes me the type of person who like could just hang out in his house by himself and probably be fine.
Yeah. It's funny. I grew up, when these are coming out, like I grew up in like Letterman and Leno and all these things are on, and I would watch those things. And I really don't remember him being just Mike Myers being present in any of this stuff.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, nobody,
you're right.
Nobody has a sense that they know Mike Myers, which is why, once again, he is the Daniel Day-Lewis of
right?
comedic actors. The same way people are like, I don't know what Daniel Day-Lewis actually sounds like, and which actually like I do, and it's weird hearing actual Daniel
He's
Day-Lewis
so
stuff.
like soft spoken.
Yeah.
And
But yeah, it's sort of the same with Mike Myers.
Yeah.
Like if I just saw Mike Myers just talking and being normal, it kind of be like
what is happening right
a little
now?
off-putting.
I know, it's really wild to think about.
Yeah. So let's transition from that to another 1999 movie featuring another 90s SNL alumni. This one is Big Daddy, and I described it as Adam Sandler was my guy. Like if I had a favorite celebrity of any sort when I was at this age.
Yeah, let's talk about that. What was the progression?
Sandler. So it was Billy Madison.
Yeah.
That brought me in.
Yeah.
I saw that was the first one I saw, and then I think Happy Gilmore actually came out before. Yeah, Billy Madison.
No, it's Billy Madison, then Happy Gilmore.
But they were like so close.
They were pretty. I think
they were both, I think, on video by the time I saw.
I'm sure they were.
So I was able to see one and kind of immediately.
They
see
were
the
really
next
close
one.
together.
So Happy Gilmore, and it was awesome. And it's kind of like, okay, this guy is, we're 2 for 2. We're red hot.
Yeah.
Then I kind of went back and discovered some of his SNL stuff. Then I had friends who had access to his comedy CDs, which were. That's another thing, like that's very much maybe of its time, and I don't know if people nowadays have any correlation to it, but like these people you would see on TV or in movies, and there'd be a certain level of like edge or raunchiness to them, but then you listen to their like comedy stuff.
Oh my gosh,
it is next level. Dude. Like, oh man, I'm really doing something.
Like I'm not
edgy or wrong here.
I'm not handcuffed by television right now.
Yeah, they are.
And Adam Sandler album is. Like there's that song he sings about a shampoo bottle, and it is very descriptive.
There's a lot of crudeness, a lot of language. Like they just don't hold anything back.
Nothing.
Yeah. So you hear those, and again, not that those were my favorite, but just just expanding the lore of Adam Sandler.
Exactly.
And then we get more movies. I'm a Wedding Singer defender. I think
I like Wedding Singer. I watched it like 2 weeks ago.
Yeah. And so we get to Big Daddy and. That like I said, at that point, I'm the type of fan where I'm going to like this movie.
Oh yeah,
no matter what. I'll be darned if I'm going to see this movie and not like it.
Yep.
So I am definitely the target demographic for it, and I love the movie when it came out. So much time has passed, though. There's a lot of Sandler content that like now I look back on and go like, yeah, I'm not a fan of.
He's just yelling.
There was a long stretch, like I've not revisited his comedy albums. Maybe if I revisit them, they'd be funnier than I remember. But I'm kind of like, his SNL stuff's kind of like, there's some funny stuff, but I still do love Happy Gilmore. That's
oh my gosh,
that's probably my favorite of his early stuff. Billy Madison, he's good as it is. It's like it's so juvenile now. When I watch it, it's like it strains me a little bit. So Big Daddy, I was like, I really am worried about how it's gonna hang up. It's been probably 15 years since I've watched it. And I just thought, oh man, I don't know if this one's going to be good. And rewatching it, I was actually really pleasantly surprised that I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Now, one of my first notes, and this is a large part, is informed by the fact that I watched Austin Powers one night and Big Daddy the next. And I said, this one definitely has a much more normal movie narrative flow.
Yes.
It actually felt like a short movie to me because you kind of just flow with it.
Yeah.
Like I said, it didn't get to the end and go like, oh, now we're doing I got to cram in some plot thing that Austin Powers did. Again, it really feel like I'm knocking Austin Powers for that. I don't really mean to be, but
no, I know what you're saying.
This one just felt like much more of a real movie to me. And what I found was just like what I said with Austin Powers, the things that I liked about it really have kind of shifted.
Yeah. The
emotional parts of this movie hit a lot more as an adult. Like not even being an actual dad, but just now being an adult who does spends time as a teacher and coach, like investing in young people and all that stuff. Like the emotional stuff hit me a lot stronger than I expected it would in this movie. And then I still found a lot of it pretty funny too. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but my experience was very similar where it's like, Adam Sandler, I think even though he's had a ton of success, I think in some ways he doesn't quite even get enough credit for what he did in the 90s. Like, Billy Madison, all these movies where it's like, I am just so clearly going to pander and lean into like, I'm appealing to like 14 to 19-year-old dudes. And he was so smart to do that. Like he unapologetically made these ridiculous, stupid, juvenile movies. And that's how he found his audience.
Yeah.
And kudos to him because, like, you look at the numbers of his movies, and it's like Billy Madison, And then Happy Gilmore comes out and makes a little bit more. Wedding Singer comes out, does pretty good. Big Daddy makes big money. And then he's off and stuff. And so it's like he was really smart. And not surprisingly, like, because I'm not a juvenile anymore, you know, like that stuff worked not so good to me. Like, it doesn't work to me at all now when it's like him and the kid are throwing stuff and making Steve Buscemi fall. You know, it's like, okay, like that's really dumb. But like you said, you go, okay, like in the middle of this ridiculous movie, there's some sweet moments here, and that worked way better for me this time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure. There's a lot of stuff in this that I go, wow, definitely of its time, can't get made today. The fact that there's an entire comedic subplot line that two of his friends are now gay.
Yes.
And one friend is super uncomfortable about it.
Yes.
At the time, like, again, the two guys kiss on camera, you know, and at the time, like, that was still a big deal.
Oh, yeah.
And when they did that, you know, the whole movie theater kind of, like, that was a shock. We didn't see that coming. And, like, nowadays, you can't pull that as a shock effect thing or have it be a comedic line. So, you know, it stood out because you don't see anything like that now. It made it feel much more 99. It did actually still make me laugh. The friend who's just always like,
I know, it's funny,
super uncomfortable about it. But yeah, Adam Sandler was playing such like extreme characters.
Mm-hmm.
We said Billy Madison and Happy Gilmore. They're not even real people. Like there's you know, they're so cartoonish in how eccentric they are.
Yeah,
Wedding Singer a little more grounded, but still pretty grounded. But this was the first one where it's like Adam Sandler's almost playing like a real person. An Adam Sandler type person, but a real
but up
person.
To that moment, probably the most like real person he's played.
For sure, yeah. And you know, it's had the most emotional stakes of any Adam Sandler movie to that point. By far. So it was, as you said, it's Adam Sandler growing up. Adam Sandler is maturing.
And that was a really smart progression for him. You know, whether he did it on purpose, he probably did. It's like, I can't just keep being Billy Madison.
Yeah.
Now he doesn't lose the Adam Sandler-ness. Mm-hmm. And that's, like I said, like that's the least funny stuff to me. Like when all of a sudden he starts talking, you know, and screams and yells. Yeah. That stuff isn't funny to me.
Somebody get this kid a Happy Meal.
That stuff's not funny to me anymore.
Yeah, when the guy says nice parroting and he said, "What are you, my shrink?" and throws his fries, that did make me laugh.
I don't mean that as like, oh, I am so grown up and sophisticated. I don't mean it that way at all. I don't know. You just kind of graduate out of that where you're like, I know Adam Sandler just yelled and he used the weird voice and all that stuff. That wasn't as funny, but it's fun to watch this. Like you said, watch Adam Sandler grow up and kind of lean into like this undeniable like charm and charisma he had. Even when he is playing really in this movie, he's playing a loser.
Yeah,
he is. But because he just had this Adam Sandler-ness to him where you're like, you know what? But he's a lovable loser.
He is.
Yeah.
And admittedly, like, again, when you're a 14-year-old watching it, you're like, this is the coolest guy in the world. Yeah. He works one day, we get a toll booth, and then he like just sleeps and hangs out. And
he's eating cereal. Like, you know, they kind of show like the little montage thing at the beginning. He's eating cereal. It's like running down his face. You're like, love this guy. Yeah. Love this guy. Yeah.
Yeah. He makes a comment to his dad about like his financial state, and his dad's like, don't spend it on stupid stuff. He's like, I'm not going to spend it on stupid stuff. Cut to him carrying a surfboard. And he lives in New York. You know,
it's wild. It's wild.
There's some great jokes like that.
There's funny stuff. Yeah.
There's you know, ongoing jokes in the movie that don't work as well. Like
the stuff with Hooters.
The Hooters.
That was so annoying.
It carries on too long. The only part of that made me laugh again was when she's cleaning the apartment, walking by him, she kind of bumps into him on purpose, hits him in the head, and he just Hooters.
Yeah.
Like I don't know. Like he's so angry, and all he could think to say was this thing that I know annoys you.
I was going to say it over and over and over again.
That's all I'm going to do. That didn't make me laugh. But again, smaller things that make me laugh. You know, not that I laughed out loud, but the whole idea of getting McDonald's right at 11 and then finding out breakfast ended at 10:30.
Yeah.
And like it just being such a disappointment. Now McDonald's does breakfast all day, but so again, younger people probably won't get it. But back in 1999, I remember that being a big thing. Like
we got to get there.
Like it closed at 10:30, or they stop at 10:30. Like that's such a big deal.
Oh yeah.
And it's a lot of humor out of that.
Oh yeah. Hey, I'm so glad we chose these movies because it's almost more fun to talk about the personas of the stars of the two movies, really, than in the actual movie because they're both such ridiculous movies. It's almost neither here nor there. You know, to pick up like what are you going to accomplish by nitpicking Big Daddy? Yeah, you know what I mean? Where it's like, so they just get to like decide this in court. That's all. It doesn't even matter.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like both these movies are showcases for their stars and what they brought to the table in the world of comedy. And to me, the most interesting thing is, like I said, watching it through the 2024 lens, where it's like, same question with Mike Myers, like, where's our Adam Sandler? Like, Adam Sandler is still working. Right. So it's not like he's gone. But it's like I said,
no, there's not a new young crop of this.
No, this feels like a relic of the time where you're like, it's crazy to me that Big Daddy and Austin Powers came out like within a month of each other, I think, and they both killed it at the box office. Mm-hmm. Now, because comedy is so limited and comedians are so limited, that would be such a grudge match, you know, and they would be stealing each other's audiences and stuff. It's wild to think in 1999 there was room for both of these guys to be weird and eccentric and all the things that they are, and both succeed. I think I did the math. These two movies combined made like $550 million in 1999.
Yeah,
that's wild.
Yeah, I mean it's a little bit of the discussion that is had around like cable TV and the shows that were on back in like the 80s and stuff, when there wasn't so many channels. You know, there was a fair number of channels, but these movies and shows that would be so famous, so popular, and get such big viewing numbers.
Yeah.
You know, and there was fewer celebrities and, you know, things like that. Or even movies coming out and there's fewer movies, so they would run for forever in the theater, and so the stars are bigger. Everything has become so like large. Like the pool of everything is so large. So thinking about the 90s, SNL was such an impactful force.
Oh yeah.
You know, you had these different classes coming through.
I mean, it created Will Ferrell.
And it created who the well-known humorous people were.
Absolutely.
Like everyone in the country knew, like, well, here's our 5 to 10 funny people going right now. And they come from SNL, and that's how we're all going to know them. But now, like I said, social media and everything, like there's so many different places to find who you think are your funny people. And there's not like, hey, who's our 10 funny people now? Everybody's just kind of finding their own funny
version.
People, their own what humor they like online, and people aren't as big as stars in comedy as they were back then. I mean, you still got big stars, and you got big stars doing comedy. But you look at, I mean, the biggest comedies of the past several years, I mean, Deadpool and Wolverine is one of the biggest comedies the last few years, but it's not even just a straight up comedy. No. It's got to have all the other stuff. It's got to be, you know, Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman.
It's got the Marvel thing attached characters.
To it. Yeah, like, you know, same thing for Chris Hemsworth and Thor Ragnarok. You know, I think that's one of the best comedies the last several years, but it's not just a comedy. And, and we've talked about the blending of and melding of genres in film. Yeah, just straight up comedians.
Yep. I know.
It
doesn't feel like they exist anymore. And that, to me, was the most enjoyable thing about revisiting both of these movies, even with the stuff that didn't work. Like, at least you had, you know, it's like I said, like Mike Myers is doing his weird, like, I want to immerse myself to the extreme into these characters and, you know, create these characters. And Adam Sandler was very much tapping into hey, I'm going to make movies for like teenage boys to go see. And they did that so well, so successfully. The numbers don't lie. And now you're like, there's just not these people anymore. And too, like watching these movies again, and we don't have to dive deep into this, but you watch these movies, and there's something about going backwards that's so fun, because it's like, man, I just long for this time when nobody was scared of like cancel culture and that kind of stuff. It's like, if we want to make a joke about whatever, someone being gay, we're just going to do it.
Yeah.
Like it, don't like it, laugh, don't laugh. I don't care. We thought it was funny, so we did it. And that was something else, too, I enjoyed, but also kind of bummed me out a little bit about watching these movies this week, where you didn't have to worry about, you know, I mean, you could probably have this whole discussion about how these comedy movies would treat women.
Yeah.
But like that was just the way it was in 1999, and we all laughed, including women. It was wild. And again, I'm not trying to get ultra deep here on the Big Daddy Austin Powers episode, but I'm just saying, like, these are the things that contributed to these comedies working. They had a fearlessness to them. They had no shackles or constraints on them about anything, and they just went for it. And now, I think for a variety of reasons, not just political stuff, but you don't have someone who is just so willing to I mean, you think about, like, I know we're talking about Big Daddy, but I want to go back to Mike Myers for a second. You think about what a swing he's taking. And like, okay, I'm going to create this gross, greasy, fat Scottish guy, and his name is Fat Bastard. You're taking a huge risk.
Yeah.
And he is going to be in a lot of this movie. And it's like, there was just this fearlessness of like, I am just going to pour everything into this and hope people will laugh. And I just don't feel like you get that anymore.
No, yeah.
And it's like in the same thing. It's like Steve Buscemi in Big Daddy. It's like, hey, man, we need you to just be this weird homeless guy on a wheelchair, and we're going to throw sticks, and you're going to crash. Like, okay, cool, I'll do it. And it's like, that's some fearlessness on Steve. I think Steve Buscemi at this point has been in Quentin Tarantino movies. He's been in Coen Brothers movies. Mm-hmm. Like, he wasn't like some kind of huge, he was in Fargo, which won Oscars.
Yeah.
And then he has this willingness to cameo, basically, in these ridiculous Adam Sandler movies.
Yeah. And we haven't even mentioned the fact that Rob Schneider can just play an Indian guy.
Nobody questioned it.
Yeah, nobody
at all. It's stereotypical. It's offensive. It's all these things. But in 1999, we were like, his voice sounds funny. That's really funny.
Yeah. And watching him try to read the words on the cue card.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can't do that now.
And no, you can't. And I really believe that factors in to the success of these movies. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's crazy. It's crazy. And it's crazy. Like I said, do you have the numbers on Big Daddy?
I do, actually. So
they're high, I know.
Yeah, $34 million budget, $234 million gross. So just a nice, clean $200 million profit there.
$200 million profit.
Yeah.
For Big Daddy, in which, like I said, Adam Sandler and a kid are throwing sticks at Steve Buscemi in a wheelchair, and he's crashing and burning.
So that's like if I'm doing the math correctly here, quickly, man, that's a combined like $550 million for Austin Powers 2 and Big Daddy.
Yeah. When you're talking like $400 and something million of that is all profit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wild.
That would just literally never happen today unless there's a major shift really quickly in comedy.
Yeah.
Just is not going to happen.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sitting here, I'm trying to think of like, what was the last great, just straight comedy? And it's really hard to come up with something that is just straight comedy that was really great.
I think it's also interesting to note both of these movies, like you said, some raunchiness, they're juvenile, but they're both PG-13 movies too.
Yeah.
And that's something that happened with, your Seth Rogen and
Judd Apatow.
Apatow, hard R comedies. And I wonder too, but those were successful until they weren't.
Yeah.
So that may be a switch too. And that was an interesting thing too, watching these is like, they're pushing the envelope for what they can do, but they knew where to, I don't know, it's weird. There was this wildness of like, we're going to make all kinds of jokes about, race and sexuality and all these things. But as far as like staying within that PG-13, they knew how to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then it turned into like, no, we're making hard R comedies. And then, that was the Judd Apatow thing.
Yeah.
So it's all really interesting to think about just the comedies and the progression of comedies and these, like I said, so fascinating to think that, there was a Mike Myers, there was an Adam Sandler. And I know there's more in that time period that I just am not thinking of right now, but it was like,
well, Farley.
Yeah.
And,
Farley,
Spade. Yeah.
It's wild. And then, like Rob Schneider got his chance doing like Deuce Bigelow and stuff, but it's like, it felt like there was so much room for comedians to succeed. And now it feels like it's, like we've only got room for one, maybe two big comedians. And I don't even know, who they are right now.
Yeah. I mean, now it's just, we've got movie stars who can also be funny is what we have. We don't have comedians. We've got that.
Yeah.
Like I said, Chris Hemsworth or Chris Pratt, like they're not straight up comedians. They're movie stars who can be funny.
Yeah, and I think of like Jennifer Lawrence doing that movie last year that we didn't like, No Hard Feelings, where it was just like you said, I was a movie star. It's like, now I'm going to try and do, and I think she even said that, it was like, I want to do an R-rated comedy.
Yeah.
So it's like a movie star trying to fit into the comedian box, kind of.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the last thing I wanted to say about Sandler is this was really before, Big Daddy was before, as we said, he's showing the progression. He'd only played like almost cartoonishly comedic characters. Sandler has some real acting chops. He's shown it in the years since in some of his dramatic roles.
I mean, he was in a PTA movie.
Yeah.
He was in a Paul Thomas Anderson movie. He works with the brothers, Uncut Gems.
Yeah, the
Safdie?
Yeah, Safdie brothers.
He's really good in that movie.
Yeah. And even like, I mean, the reality is movies that aren't necessarily even prestige like that. I mean, he did the movie Hustle, the basketball movie. And it's just like, hey, you know, Sandler's just actually just good at he can play a normal guy even at least, you know, normal enough in these more dramatic roles. I thought he was good in movies like Spanglish and Reign Over Me, which were not big hit movies, but it's him playing more dramatic roles and doing a really good job with it. And, you know, Big Daddy maybe it's not that, but it's almost like the fulcrum, the pivot point between Billy Madison, Happy Gilmore.
That's a good point.
And, you know, him being able to pull off just a little bit more when he does get serious in Big Daddy. Yeah. You know, he
doesn't crash and burn. That's for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not sitting there going, man, Adam Sandler was robbed of an Oscar nomination. But it's not like, well, he tried to do, but he's pretty good. Unfortunately, I think he followed up Big Daddy with The Waterboy.
Yeah.
I think, which is just an abysmal,
I haven't rewatched in a long
movie.
Time. That's one that definitely.
I think I would just be annoyed from the second it started to the second it ended.
When it came out, I thought it was so great, and now I'm like, I think I can.
I think I would hate that movie right now. You know what's interesting about Sandler too? With me, I have not seen a lot of he does all these Netflix movies with Jennifer Aniston. Yeah. I haven't seen one of them.
I haven't seen
murder mystery, some kind of murder.
I haven't seen neither of the murder mystery movies.
I haven't seen those. He did. What did he do? I was just thinking.
I don't know if I've watched any of his comedic stuff that he's done on Netflix. I have watched some of the more dramatic stuff, which again haven't been big hits. He had the one come out this year, the Spaceman.
We talked about it. We didn't love it.
The Meyerowitz stories, which I can't remember anything about, but I remember it being like okay, and he was decent in it. That he did the Hustle movie, like I said.
Yeah, I've seen that kind of stuff, but a lot of his stuff, I don't even know if I like. He did another one. Like I know him and Drew Barrymore did like Wedding Singer, and they did like 50 First Dates. I think they did another one, didn't they?
Yeah, blended or something. Where they were like in South Africa or something.
Yeah, I haven't seen it. So I mean, it's funny. I definitely tapered off on watching Sandler stuff, but it wasn't because like I didn't like Sandler anymore. It's weird. I don't know why I did that.
Well, he's one of those guys that Adam Sandler, the person, seems like such a likable.
He does.
Good dude.
Yeah.
And he's the type of celebrity that everybody's like, I'd love to hang with Sandler.
Yeah, you've never heard he's never had some big scandal.
So even when his movies are bad, everyone's just kind of like cool about it, They're like, Sandler, he tried.
Yeah, and I think he's pretty open where it's like, yeah, it's really fun to make these grown-ups, grown-ups, because I just get to hang out with my friends for several months.
Yeah, I get my friends together, we go to some cool location.
And we film grown-ups too.
Yeah.
And it's probably not a good movie, but it makes a ton of money, and me and my friends get to hang out.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, in a lot of ways, he's kind of living the dream.
Yeah. So, and then, he's a fashion icon.
He is. He just always...
in his own way. Like, I think that's one thing that people, like, our age, our generation love about him is, like, yeah, this dude loves to just rock some old school baggy basketball shorts and a t-shirt.
Dude, you and I might be dressed better right now than he does on like his red carpets. And I'm wearing a Mario shirt.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think there's even I've seen on like Instagram and stuff, there's a clip where it's like him and Jennifer Aniston. She's like, nice of you to dress up. She's just riffing on him and he doesn't care at all.
Yeah.
Like, so you can see why Sandler has appeal.
Mm-hmm.
Like you said, he seems like a nice dude. He's chill. He just leans into this like, yeah, I do this juvenile stuff with my friends, but I'm a bazillionaire, so more power to him.
Yeah.
And Big Daddy, I guess I derailed us a little bit with all this big comedy stuff, but yeah, I enjoyed watching it again.
Yeah, it is it's a movie that is. I think what I was surprised about was how much it is just him and the kid. Like I think Jon Stewart is the third top billed guy, and I'm like, Jon Stewart
disappears for the whole middle portion of the movie.
Maybe 5 minutes of total screen time.
Yeah. He's in it. They establish him at the beginning, right?
Yeah.
And then he pops back up at the end, right on time. And he's not in it at all in the middle.
Yeah.
Not at all.
And then, you start going through and be like, man, why is he third billed? Yeah. It should have been, no, it should have been him, kids, and then the love interest, what's her name? Is it Joey Lauren Adams or something like that?
Yeah, that's it, isn't it? And then Christy Swanson's the
yeah.
It's like those early Sandler movies all start with him getting broken up with by a girl because he's too juvenile. It happens in Happy Gilmore. It happens in this. Yeah, but no, it was fun to rewatch it.
Yeah, I had a good time with it.
I did too. It was like I said, it just got my brain working about comedies and how they used to work and how they don't work anymore, and it was really fascinating. And like I said, fascinating to take a look at Sandler and Mike Myers.
Yeah.
It's too bad back in the 90s where there was, Farley and Spade and Sandler and Mike Myers, and then Will Ferrell emerges shortly after that. It's too bad they never did like the whole Avengers thing where those guys, I mean, I guess like Grown-Ups, maybe you get into that a little bit, and Apatow would assemble these big casts, but it's like, felt like somewhere there was a movie to be made where it's just like all of these guys.
Yeah. For sure. Man. Yeah, I mean, the reality I think is just going to be that those guys were our guys at that right time.
They were in the right place at the right time.
And they're going to kind of always be our guys because of that. It's like having that band that you loved back in the day, and you're just always going to be a fan of that band, even if like they haven't really been that band in the same way
for a
long time. You can still listen to their old stuff and be like, yeah, it's still my jam.
Hardly a week goes by where I don't listen to the song "Welcome to the Jungle" by Guns N' Roses. I grew up on it. I still think it's awesome. And same thing with these movies. Like I said, I just watched Wedding Singer like 2 weeks ago because I was scrolling through one of the apps and it was on there. And I was like, you know what? I really like this movie. And I watched it, and guess what? I still really like that movie. Mm-hmm. Even though it's got stuff that doesn't work and stuff that I didn't think worked at the time, but now does. It's a whole thing. And it's I don't know. It did bum me out a little bit to think that, even though, like I've said on here before, comedy is maybe my least favorite genre of movie, doesn't mean I don't want there to be good comedies out there.
Right.
And just doesn't really feel like there are right now.
Yeah. I don't know, maybe we blame Joss Whedon for all this.
We should probably. Yeah.
Because his desire to like take the comedic quippiness and humor and put it into everything else, and now people are like, oh, that's all we need in comedy is for our Avengers to be funny, and that sort of thing.
I don't know.
But
yeah.
I think it would be interesting to ask more young people and just be like, who are your favorite funny people? Because you can't even just say comedians anymore. Just like, who are your favorite funny people, and see like what their response is.
I don't think if I went home right now and asked my kids to name your favorite funny person, I don't think they would name movie stars.
No.
I think they would name some TikToker or YouTuber or
Theo
something.
Vaughn or something
Theo
like
Vaughn
that.
or someone who, like you said, only exists to live in little short bursts of clips.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's really, really wild.
Yeah.
Did you get feedback from people asking about these movies? I asked my kids, I go, do you know what Austin Powers is? And I will say, like, my older 3 kids, I feel like they have pretty good movie IQs because I've introduced them to a lot of movies. They kind of gave me like that, like, yeah, I think I know what that is. I really think what that meant was no.
Yeah.
And they just didn't want to hurt my feelings, which they wouldn't have. But
I feel like it has to be no, because Austin Powers is the type of character, if you know him at all, you know.
You know. And so I was like, oh, the longer time passes, I think, this next generation just isn't getting introduced to Austin Powers in any way.
Yeah. And Austin Powers, I would put him up there with Napoleon Dynamite, with even like Jack Sparrow, characters that became such like predominant like pop culture figures. Everyone had an impression of them. Everybody liked that. They blew up really big, and then like at a certain point, people were like, just enough.
Oh yeah, I think that's totally fair.
I never want to see this again. And
I never want to hear someone in the hallway doing it. Like I definitely remember getting to that point with Napoleon Dynamite, where it was like, stop with the Napoleon Dynamite voice.
Yeah.
So
like, the first time I saw Napoleon Dynamite, I think it was funny. Yeah, it was like so weird and different. And
I thought it was
now,
funny.
Like if somebody was like, sit down and watch Napoleon Dynamite with me, I'd be like, I'd rather do anything else.
I really don't want to.
I've met capacity at one point. And it's just gone forever.
Yeah.
And same thing again for Jack Sparrow with Pirates of the Caribbean. I thought Jack Sparrow was a great character in the first Pirates of the Caribbean. I made it through the next 2, and I know there's been more since then, and I'm just like, I never want to see it again.
Yep. I would agree completely with that. So really, really fascinating look back into 1999 this year, or this week.
Yeah, absolutely. Still some meat on the bones. That's
the
great thing about 1999.
I'm already working in my brain about what I want to do next.
Yeah, and I'm working on my brain about what we're gonna do next week because I'm not.
Okay, sometimes we just talk. I'm going to talk for a second. It's a little cold right now.
Yeah.
I was checking the theater and I was like, I almost talked myself into going to see Blink twice.
Yeah, I was close.
But ultimately, where I landed is like, I feel like I've seen this movie before.
Yeah.
I feel like I've seen this movie. And I just couldn't get myself overly excited to go see it.
Yeah.
I just couldn't. And I don't think next week's looking a whole lot better. So
yeah, next week I think the big release is the Reagan biopic.
I literally couldn't be less excited. I like Dennis Quaid.
Yeah.
I just don't.
I don't know. Like I'm just over biopics.
I've said that forever. I'm like, these biopics, I feel like people just get such a pass for like, that was so good. And I've watched them and I'm like, it really, like, my ultimate example is Walk the Line. Mm-hmm. Like, people are like, oh my gosh, this is, Reese Witherspoon won an Oscar. And I'm just like, but is that a good movie? Is it?
No.
Yeah. Bohemian Rhapsody. Like, was that a good movie? Like, the guy's doing a good Freddie Mercury impression.
There are good moments.
I don't think it means it's a good movie.
Always the problem with those movies is there's just too much to like encompass for a musician. And almost every biopic would make a better documentary. Like, let's just talk about the real person. Yeah. Let's not do some dramatic reenactment of it all. Let's just do a documentary, show clips that really happened, have people talk about it, and the stories that were real will be more interesting. And that's always the problem with biopics is they always have to take artistic liberties, and then we always hear what they were, and we go like, that kind of ruins the movie when I find out like the most entertaining scene in the movie was total BS.
Yeah, it didn't even happen that way.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm not planning on buying a ticket to Reagan.
Yeah.
I'm just not. So I don't know. What are we gonna do? We're just gonna turn on the cameras and see what happens.
We'll see. We'll
come up with something.
We'll brainstorm. We'll figure something out. I mean, it's the Jeremy and Andy Talk Movies podcast. We will be on here talking movies. That's the one thing we can guarantee.
You know what my ultimate dream is to get you to watch something terrible like a Commando or a Cobra or something, and we just talk through it.
Yeah.
We'll bust that out one of these days.
I will say, like a week and a half ago, I was hanging out with friends, and we watched every once in a while. These friends of mine like a intentionally really bad, not B movie, C movie.
It's a blast.
We watched this movie called Malibu Shark Attack.
Oh,
that was
just dreadful. Yeah,
you know, CGI that you laugh when you see the shark, and it's one of those things we threw on, and we kind of expected we'd watch 20 minutes of it and laugh, and we watched the entire thing.
Yeah,
and it was an experience.
For as much as we love to talk and name our favorite movies, there's always a place in the world for bad movies.
Yeah, and movies that know that they're garbage.
For sure, we'll figure something out. We'll be fine. It'll be fine.
Absolutely. Well, everybody, thank you for taking this trip with us.
Yeah,
back
to
1999,
really fun,
and we hope that you guys will join us again for whatever we're talking about.
Whatever it is we're going to be talking about
next week.
Yeah. See you next week.